Welcome to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we'll be your tour guides today as we take Mamoru Oshii's 1995 cyberpunk anime classic and put it head-to-head with Rupert Sanders' 2017 live-action remake.
Yeah, this is our first head-to-head format. We've talked about a lot of different formats we want to do, and this is one of the ones I'm most excited for. I love lots of older movies, and when they get remade, I normally like to be a hater, and this gives me a lot of reason to.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into this too. It's a little different than the previous episodes we've recorded, and I think it's fertile territory.
Yeah, and if we're lucky, it won't be 3 hours long because we're covering 2 movies.
Yeah, let's keep it, down to 2. Maybe that's a success.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But before we get into that, what have you been up to since our last podcast?
Well, I haven't been doing a lot of super geeky stuff with the world being closed, but I've gone to my local game store a few times, Dice Age Games. I've gone, which is in Vancouver, Washington, and it's a really nice shop. They've done a lot of work in order to make the shop shoppable for the COVID times and social distancing and all of that. They've got a really big display for the 9th edition of Warhammer 40K, and they're really my one-stop shop for hobby materials. I bought a lot of paint. I've bought some basing material and some new models. I try to pick something up every time I go in.
Yeah, this has been, I think, reoccurring over the last few episodes. You've been working on building this new army, right?
Yeah, I've been working on my Craft Worlds Eldar army. I'm almost done painting it. Honestly, it's all base coated and it's all ready to go. I could play it right now, but they would call that battle ready in the Games Workshop world. But I'm trying to make it parade ready.
Ooh, parade ready.
Yeah.
So, let's see. You said what you're doing, Craft Worlds.
Yeah.
And then Carrie's doing, what's the army that she's
Tau
building?
Empire.
See, I think that's a really on theme with today's episode because they have a very Masamune Shiro style to all their tech.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think that's cool. I like these corners of Warhammer that you're exploring.
Yeah, I'm into the Tau quite a lot, and I consider doing a Tau army, but obviously I'm not going to do the same one as my wife. When I can just enjoy her models and help paint and model and all that.
If you do the same army, the next step is a joint Facebook account.
Oh man, I hate those when you see like, what's the Facebook? This is Bob Karen Smith. It's like, come on, Bob Karen.
Yeah, they definitely share a Warhammer army with each other.
Well, what have you been into lately?
Oh man, I mean, not much since our last episode. I can't say that I've done a whole lot of geeky stuff. The world is shut down.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, lawn maintenance and landscaping at my new house isn't really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, I do mow the lawn. That is a thing, but it's not good audio.
Yeah, I mean, I got one of those really cool zero turn mowers that drives super fast.
I am jealous.
It's like 20 miles an hour. It's insane, dude. And it turns like a tank. Like I can literally do donuts.
Have you taken it out on the street?
Just a little road right by my house, and yeah, it's pretty cool. One of my neighbors has like a little dinky, like I say dinky now, but a regular riding lawnmower with the steering wheel and stuff. And he was looking at mine and he goes, "Now I might have to upgrade." The other neighbor has a full-on tractor and he just hauls a brush hog around. It's kind of the redneck version.
That's that country living.
Yeah.
I will tell a country anecdote because I saw a cowboy get knocked down by a herd of sheep this morning, and I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I was trying to parse that when you texted me. I was like, what? Oh yeah, that sheep farm across the street.
Yeah, so I live next to, not to enable cyberstalkers, but I live next to a sheep farm. Where
one's going to cyberstalk us.
Their primary function is training sheepdogs. And so you pay them basically to have your dog herd their sheep.
Yeah,
and
it's a good gig.
So there's this cowboy and, I don't call everyone a cowboy that's over there, but he looks the part, the Wrangler and the big Stetson hat and
Well,
everything.
and he teaches people how to herd things.
No. He's the payer.
Oh, he's the dude.
He's the dude. Yeah, he's come to run his dog around, and he's got this border collie, and I don't know if the dog did the wrong thing or the guy told the dog to do the wrong thing, but the dog herded the whole group of sheep right into the guy and knocked him on his ass, and it was funny. He didn't get hurt. I would not be laughing at a man trampled to death by a herd of sheep.
No.
But just a big cowboy taking a pratfall, like a very slapstick fall, is hilarious.
Yeah, that is funny. That's that's worth mentioning. Well, I guess since we haven't been up to a whole lot, let's just jump right into this head to head because we're really covering 2 movies. Okay. What's your history with Ghost in the Shell?
It's an odd one because somehow I was aware of Ghost in the Shell, but I sort of skipped it. I hadn't watched it for a long time, but the very first anime really that I watched with the consciousness that it was an anime was Dominion Tank Police.
Oh, interesting.
Which is another Masamune Shirow manga that was adapted into an anime. And so I've got a lot of history with this creator. Like, I would say, like, probably he's one of, like, my favorite mangaka, like, manga artists and writers.
Yeah.
And I just loved Dominion Tank Police, and I also liked Appleseed and Black Magic M66, like kind of everything that Shiro had touched. But Ghost in the Shell kind of came out, at the end of my high school career, and as I was maybe kind of transitioning out of anime fandom a little bit, and I just sort of skipped over it until several years later. I saw it at a animation film festival at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, OMSI. They have a big IMAX screen.
Yeah.
And so I watched the movie there, and I watched it after all of the movies that it influenced had come out.
Yeah.
Like, so after I'd already seen The Matrix, and then you watch Ghost in the Shell, and you're like, oh, that's where they got their swag from. Like, that's where so much of The Matrix came from that movie.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned all of those different movies that you saw that were from the same creator. I saw all of those as well, and I also saw Ghost in the Shell when it was new, and it was my favorite one out of all of those that you mentioned. It's just, I guess I'm getting into my history. Did you have anything else on that?
No, but I will kind of like give an explanation to that, and I think that's Mamoru Oshii's influence on the movie, because the stuff that Shiro does is very action comedy. There's a lot of slapstick in all of his comic books and all of his anime, and that is completely removed from the Ghost in the Shell movie.
Yeah, and he wasn't even the writer for the movie.
Yeah, it's more. It's based on his concept, but it's not his baby.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of those ones where it's they got another writer to adapt a manga into a movie, which is common in Hollywood, where they get a Hollywood writer to adapt a book or something like that.
And I don't want to make that sound like it got stolen away from Shiro.
He clearly made a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I think it's if you dig into his subsequent work, you see that he's fairly divorced from the anime adaptions of his manga. He creates, and he's fine with handing off his baby. And he does revisit Ghost in the Shell a couple more times, but then he's ready to move on. And now he basically just he does this series of like erotic manga called Gal Grease. And he just he's living his best life, cashing those Ghost in the Shell checks and drawing porn.
Yeah, I'm not much into the manga porn in that I've never even considered it. But honestly though, if you if you cashed out something that you did when you were a younger dude, and you're just like, they're just like, oh yeah, here's some millions, and then later on here's more millions, and then of course there's been many different adaptations, animation and whatnot, and spin-off comics, mangas. There's no way you say no to that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to really, you don't really have to be commercially bound by what you pursue. I mean, like, I would just do like podcasting, maybe vodcasting on Twitch, and just chill. I just do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. It's not that porn is not the dream necessarily, but the dream as a creative is to just be so financially independent that you can do whatever you want. It just happens to be what he wants to do with porn.
Yeah, and that's cool. No shame.
Yeah.
If that's your jam, that's your jam. That's cool. Well, I guess my history with this is similar to yours. These things came out. This movie and this other movies by the same creator came out during our youth, and I watched it. On a Hollywood Video VHS rental.
For sure.
I was a Hollywood Video customer. Like I was big into that, and it also helped that we had a friend that worked there.
Yeah, I almost worked there.
Yeah, so we went there a lot to hang out with our friend. Shout out to Dana. And I watched a lot of movies that I would rent from Hollywood, and I really liked this one. This was my favorite anime of the era, aside from Vampire Hunter D, of course. That's a given.
Yeah.
That's my favorite of all. It still might be my favorite anime. It's a good one.
I don't know that it holds up as well. You know, it's a...
No need to rewatch.
Yeah, leave it in that rosy corner of your memory.
I'm just going to leave it in my mind. I love it, and I don't need to see it again. Well, I think I did watch it again like 10 years ago, and I did like it. But anyway, that's not Ghost in the Shell. So I watched it back then, and so it always had a spot in my heart. Like I always was like, yeah, this is cool. This is what cyberpunk is about. Oh, yeah. This is what Shadowrun should be like. Because I'm a role player. I was like, I don't care about magic. I don't care about any of that. I want to play cyberpunk role-playing games and stuff, and I want it to be like Ghost in the Shell.
Oh yeah, it is very much in that kind of cyberpunk where people are jacking into payphones and stuff.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to get too far ahead before the first break, but come on, cat jumped on the table.
Yeah, we podcast here at my house, and I have 2 cats, and sometimes they like to get involved with things.
They're aspiring podcasters themselves.
Yes.
So let's talk podcast fuel. Take a break, and we will start digging into the 95 version of Ghost in the Shell.
All right.
The podcast fuel today is from a gigantic brewing company here in Portland, Oregon. And it's the Ginormous, the MK9 variation of Ginormous with Amarillo and Cascade hops. It's a 8% ABV and a probably over 100% IBU. They didn't actually list it. Like it's that's very anime. It's incalculable amount of hops.
It's an Imperial IPA, and it's a hop monster.
I picked this because it's got their Ginormous mascot, who's sort of a Go Nagai style giant robo character.
Yeah, he's like a big mecha.
Yeah, and so it seemed like a good anime beer.
Yeah, so this is good. I took a drink of it. I like IPAs. I like Imperials, and I even like triples. I like triples actually more. I like them as a little mellower and not as I don't like a bitterness. This one has maybe a hint of that bitterness at the end on the finish. Yeah, but it's a really good Imperial. This is a good beer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that sounds a little counterintuitive to say it's 100 IBUs and then that it's only got a hint of bitterness. It's extremely hop forward, but it is not astringent. It doesn't make you pucker your face up. So it's bitter, but it's like the good bitter. It's the kind you like.
Yeah, it's a full flavor profile. and it's pretty smooth. I mean, I like this beer. I don't know if it rates against some of my other favorite Imperials, because like the Northwest has a lot of really good Imperials, and IPAs in general. But it's good. I'm definitely enjoying it.
Yeah, I'd say this is actually somehow I have not had the regular ginormous. This is my first foray into ginormous. It's not my first gigantic beer by a long shot. And they're just a good solid brewery. We've got just an embarrassment of riches in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, we really do.
I've
gone to a couple of ones recently that I haven't gone to before. Like I went out to Stevenson and went to Walking Man.
Oh.
It's like an hour drive up the gorge, but it was a beautiful day, and Carrie and I wanted a beautiful drive, and so we went up the Columbia River Gorge to Stevenson, Washington for Walking Man. Very
That's
good.
Cool. You like that?
Honestly, the beer was what I would consider to be journeyman, like standard Portland Metro good.
Yeah.
It didn't blow me away good, but the food was great.
Okay.
So I was like, I'll come again.
So, yes, I'll concur on all of that, although I haven't eaten at Walking Man because I usually, if I'm doing and we're tangenting a little bit. But
this podcast fuels section. We talk about beer and beer related things.
Yeah. So if I'm doing like a gorge beer trip, I prioritize the Hood River stuff over the Washington side.
Yeah, but I've been there so many times.
Yeah. So it's just a little hop down the road for you now that you live the Shug life.
Yeah, I live in the gorge. I live outside of Washougal, just a little bit. So I'm a gorge guy. I like to think of now. And so I live on the Washington side. So I was just like, man, I've never been to Walking Man's actual tap room or their brewery, but I've had Walking Man brews and it's really good. And so we made the drive, and shout out to the ice cream shop in Stevenson, Granny's Gadunk is what it's called. Carrie and I keep joking about that name. That was so good. Like their ice cream was amazing. But I had to look up what does gadunk mean, like because you think like badonkadonk or something.
I mean, that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, that's where I was like, Granny's badonkadonk. That's messed up. But a gadunk, I guess, is a snack bar on a ship.
Huh.
Like, yeah. So I guess whoever, it's a nautical themed.
Yeah, I mean, you're close.
Thing.
You're close to the locks there.
Yeah, right there. So it makes perfect sense once you Google what is a gadunk.
That's really funny. Well, you have to go up the gorge a little bit further. Go to Everybody's if you haven't been there yet.
Oh, I haven't. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, so that's in White Salmon on the Washington side.
White Salmon's actually easier to get to because you can go down to Hood River and just cross the good bridge.
Yeah, but then you miss out that drive down 14.
Yeah, that's true. 14 is the better drive.
Well, that's been the Nick and Dave Deep Dive Gorge Beers podcast.
Yeah, see you later.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, divers. As we dig into the 1995 Ghost in the Shell, I just want to start out with the God, I don't know what you call it, the text that came up on the screen at the beginning of the movie. I think that's worth taking a moment to highlight.
All right.
In the not so distant future, when the corporate networks fill the earth with electronic and optical communication lines, but society has not yet become too computerized to erase nations and races. I thought that was really prescient, and it sets a tone, for what they're assuming the future is like. And I really like that this idea that at some point the internet erases all borders, I think is a really, especially if you think about this is 1995, the internet barely exists. That they're thinking that Oshii is thinking that all the way back then, I thought was really interesting.
And this was actually written in the late 80s by the manga and published, late 80s, early 90s, that sort of thing. But it takes place in 2029 Japan. So he's talking like 40 years. Maybe not Japan.
It's in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, yeah.
I took my notes all with the assumption that it was taking place in Japan because that's where the manga takes place.
Yeah.
But the anime is placed in Hong Kong, which is why all of the signs on all of the buildings, everything's in Chinese. Some things are in English, but there's almost zero Japanese text in the entire movie, which I thought was really weird until I saw that it was supposed to be set in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And I just want to throw this out there. This is not spoiler free. We're not doing a deep dive where we're literally going to chronologically hit it beat by beat. Mm-hmm. But for head to heads, we are going to kind of go through them and then kind of compare back and forth. So I'm in the spirit of what you read as far as the header. This is what the film is described on the internet. This is sort of like the synopsis, and I found this to be pretty interesting. Set in 2029 Japan, a cyborg public security agent who hunts a mysterious hacker known as the Puppet Master. That seems really different from what you said.
That's true. I mean, and that is...
But they're both relevant.
Yeah, they're both accurate. It just kind of depends on what you think is the important part of the movie.
Sure.
I think, to me, this movie is just Oshi's kind of philosophy on transhumanism. He's telling you about transhumanism, and he's keeping you watching with action.
For sure. It's definitely... very artistic, and this is actually I actually had put this in a different section, like I was going to talk about it near the end, but I actually think that this is worth talking about now. Is one of the things that was really interesting about this is that the general consensus from the Japanese public about the reception of this movie was that the movie is about philosophy. Mm-hmm. This movie is about the discussion of the human versus the machine, the future, and actual identity. This is a movie. This anime is about the identity of the human being, sort of transcending things like race and even body. And that is really critical when you watch this anime, to understand that this is a philosophical take on a really big question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about what is human, and what makes something human, and does human even really matter towards personhood?
Yeah, and they talk about it in both movies. They call it your ghost. You are your ghost.
Yeah.
You're not your shell. You're not the body that you were born into. You're not that thing, which is your husk. You are your ghost.
Yeah, and then what a ghost is a really interesting, because I mean, ghost really, it's I think, well, Shiro's using ghost to use an English word, so it sounds deep in Japanese.
Yeah, we might call it soul.
Yeah, we would call it a soul, but
as English natives.
But he uses the word ghost because it sounds cool to say ghost.
It's very evocative. It makes you think, oh, what's this? Ghost in the shell. Like.
So our main character, Major Motoko Kusanagi, she is a completely cybernetic body with a human brain. And so for that reason, she is regarded as a human, and people say that she has a ghost, because it's not dwelled on in the anime, but in this world there is androids.
Yeah, there are cyborgs, or I guess a cyborg is a human.
It's augmented.
Yeah, but there are robots.
Yeah, there's robots. There's all sorts of artificial intelligence in this world, but they don't have a ghost, because the ghost is like this this intangible thing, is what in their society what makes you a human.
Yeah, if you have a ghost, that means you're a person. If you don't, that means you're a machine, and thus disposable.
Yeah, you have no rights. Not that people seem to have a whole lot of rights in this world. I mean, what do you think that's like, this paramilitary police force with extrajudicial powers? I mean, what do you think about living in a world like that?
Crazy and futuristic. It's so different from our modern world.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot even imagine what it would be like to have paramilitary police occupying the streets of the city you live in.
And just randomly plucking people off the street for potential future crimes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what a sci-fi concept that did not come true.
Man, I'm glad that's not real.
Oh, okay. Sobbing. Anyways.
Yeah, sadness. We're in the Portland metro, so if you follow the news at all, we are recording this during the middle of the Battle of Portland, or whatever you want to call it. And we're not going to get into that, but for context, this movie
pushes buttons.
Being that we're from this area and this is happening in our home, and so we're not going to dwell on it, but that's where it's at. And we're releasing this, we released them in a cycle. We pre-recorded it. So this may not be as relevant when you listen. So you should know when we record it. Yeah, God, I hope it's not relevant.
Set it to auto release. So when we're in the re-education camp, it comes out anyway.
Yeah, I will. I'll upload them tonight.
But anyways, yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit more, though. The Section 9, Major Motoko Kusanagi is a part of Section 9, which is, like I said, an extrajudicial militarized police force that fights terrorism. But it really seems like they assassinate politically inconvenient people.
Yeah, they seem to be I guess, like, almost like in America, you might think of them as like the Secret Service or the U.S. Marshals, or some sort of federal policing agency that has nebulously defined duties. And in the movie, they just take out criminals who everyone knows are criminals. Like, and in the anime, it's crazy because the criminals pull out. They're like, "Look, I have immunity and I have a pass from the vice." What do they call it? The deputy minister, or something like that.
There's a lot of stuff that it strikes me very much as super entrenched in Japanese bureaucracy.
Yeah,
where there's a lot of people that are they're representatives of foreign governments that are seeking immunity, and it seems like they're just taking these people out before they can get into productive custody.
Oh yeah, they're definitely, because they know when the person, the mobster or whatever, and this is literally the opening scene. They're jumping in and they're taking out this mobster guy who's hiding behind diplomatic immunity, and they basically say, "We don't care. You're done," because they know if he gets taken in, he's gonna get out.
Yeah, and he'll get outside of their reach.
Yeah, he will definitely make it.
And I don't know. This is something that if you read any of Shiro's manga, they kind of all focus, with the exception of Orion, they all focus on sort of paramilitary police units. And he seems to know that this level of power is inappropriate, but also fetishize it at the same time. And I don't know how we're supposed to take some of this stuff. Like, what is the message, or is there even a message? He's just portraying it, and it's up to you if you think it's cool or not.
Yeah, it seems like they have their leader, Aramaki, and he seems to be kind of their moral compass. He's like the voice of reason. He pulls the trigger, so to speak, but he's at odds with some other government minister.
Yeah, he's at all the. And this is a little more clearly defined in the manga, but all the sections, like there's Section 9, Section 1 through wherever they go, they're all sort of law enforcement agencies with their own jurisdictions, and they all step on each other's toes to some degree and are competitive with each other. Like at some of them they're going after the same people, or sometimes one of them is protecting someone and one of them is chasing somebody. So Aramaki says, like, many times, I report directly to the prime minister. He's not accountable to anyone but the big boss.
And since we're comparing these movies, I just want to say that Takashi Kitano, who played the live action Aramaki, that was dope.
Yeah, that's really great casting.
That was so cool. Like his acting was above and beyond. Like he really was a highlight for me. That was one of those characters. Whereas in the anime, he was kind of like this small, nerdy, weird, crazy-haired guy, and he has crazy hair in the live action too.
But they always call him in the manga. They always call him Ape Face, or the old ape. Like, he's drawn sort of to look like more like a primate. And I think Takeshi Kitano kind of plays him like he's sort of like he's hunched and he's kind of apish also, and I think
but he's so good. Like when he gets into that car and and the cars are awesome. I want to talk about those too, but
and let's not get too far into the live action.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We already jumped the shark. No, I don't know. We jumped ahead. I wanted to talk about trying to find this movie for streaming.
Oh yeah,
this was a real pain.
I was a little bummed out. So normally, because Dave is not as much of a collector as I am.
Hoarder.
Yeah. The only difference between a hoarder and a collector is space. An organization.
You need a bigger house.
Yeah. But anyways, I tend to go out and buy these movies that we're deep diving because I want to possess them and I want to support the artist and yada yada yada.
Well, and I buy them digitally, which also supports the artist.
That's true, and that money goes direct. Whereas if I buy a used copy, it's not going to anybody. They already got paid off of it. So, make what you will of that. But I go out and buy these movies, and I probably would have done it on this one, but I didn't. I felt like pressed for time a little bit, so I just
we made a decision to do this head to head a little closer to the recording than we normally do our episodes.
Yeah, and so I paid the $2.99 to rent it from Amazon. We could the 2.0 version with the updated 3D graphics is free for Prime members.
Yeah,
but
I saw that.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no special editions for us. We're old school.
Well, the one that I got, and I don't know if it's the same one that you got, but I believe it was the 2014 re-release of this.
Yes, and it's remastered.
It's
so
HD re-release, and it's dubbed in English.
Yes, it was the same one, and I that was one of the first notes I wrote. It's like, I'm not a fan of this dub.
Yeah, it sucks. Like I'm not normally a hater on dubs because I'm a fan of the VO community. Like a lot of the people I like in like Critical Role and whatnot, other voice actors, I like their work. It's awesome. I think that they are artistic in their interpretations of the dubbing to English. But holy moly, this was not that good of a dub.
Yeah, I think the Japanese original voice cast, the acting level is just superior, and I don't think that's not a controversial statement.
No, I mean, I saw the original subbed when back in the day on VHS, and it was better.
But I'll say this for the dub, and maybe this is just because I'm a simple person and I'm not good at reading and watching the image at the same time. But I understood the movie better in English. Like I understood the message, the philosophy that it was talking about was much more clear to me watching the dub. So
it did make it easier for me to take notes while watching. But I was just upset that I couldn't find a subtitled version.
I know. I even paused it like kind of maybe 10 minutes in and looked again if I could change change the audio. Like I was like,
I got into the settings and everything.
I was like, is there no way to activate the Japanese audio? But no, there was not. So yes, we watched the same version.
Okay. Same disappointing version.
The same, yeah. So $2.99. You can rent this on Amazon, but you're better off going to FYE or wherever you buy DVDs and go get a Blu-ray of this and watch it in the Japanese.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I should have done that. I wasn't happy with the overall voice acting in this. But anyway, getting back into it, one of the other things I wanted to note since we kind of got ahead of ourselves and we're sort of rambling anyway, I wanted to note in the opening scene, the opening scenes with the high rise and the major, and how she has to take off her clothes in order to activate her camouflage skin. So she's in the bodysuit or whatever. And then shortly thereafter, they do it's kind of a medical scene montage where she's in these tanks and
she's getting like a new skin applied essentially.
Yeah, and I really feel like in this anime, it must have been controversial at the time, the nudity factor, that they really played up the physicality of this character, and it seemed like there was a bit of fan service going on there for the perceived audience.
So I think you have a valid point, but I don't think that's entirely true. I think the female form and like the fan service thing is intrinsic to all of Shiro's properties. Like we said earlier, like he's living the porno life now. That's what he likes drawing, is naked ladies.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting that her having to get nude is not part of her camouflage in the manga. It's not like that. Yeah. And it's actually more of like a baggy sort of suit that she wears, the optical camouflage. And she's fully clothed underneath it. So that is an invention for the anime. And I don't want to say it's not salacious or it's not male gazy, because it is both of those things. But I think what it is part of the metaphor, or not the metaphor, but like the philosophy. It's meant to demonstrate her disconnection from her body. She's not concerned with the body, and this is shown multiple times. She's not particularly attached to it, because she's literally a brain floating in this shell that she doesn't feel one way or the other about it. And some of the people that are less cybernetic than her, like her homie Bato, he obviously, like, he's had his eyes replaced and he's got some other cybernetic parts, but like when she gets naked and stuff, which she gets naked in front of him openly, and he always he looks away, or he comes and puts his coat around her and stuff. Like, he's much more concerned with her body than she is.
So that is true when it comes to her taking off her clothes and her not caring and just jumping into the scene. But that doesn't really have anything to do with the dreamy bubble sequence when she's underwater undergoing maintenance, and it's literally scanning her body, going up and down it in the animation scene. It's completely superfluous. It doesn't help the storyline at all. It's just, look, naked lady.
That's true.
And I feel like, and I just started listing these because I was taking notes as we go, and I go, oh, another not needed naked scene, another not needed naked scene, another not needed naked scene. Yeah. And I was just like, come on, guys, you're really making me like this movie seem like a pervy move.
That's interesting. You're not wrong. I don't think you're wrong with that observation, because for one, because those scenes aren't in the manga. And then also because the live action version does it without the explicit nudity.
Yeah, like she's literally in a bodysuit. There are no nipples or anything like there are in the manga.
It's a PG-13 movie, and that shows you you can do it without over sexualizing. You can even kind of have your cake and eat it too, or have your cheesecake and eat it too. You can have it be sexy without being over sexualized, and they do lean on the sexualization more than they should.
The manga is way more over sexualized than
Or the
the
anime,
live.
you mean?
I'm sorry, yeah, the anime is
Yeah.
way more over sexualized than the live action movie. I feel like they have a lot more of the like hot lady suspended in water in a very vulnerable posed looking thing, and they linger on it too long. Whereas with the Scarlett Johansson scenes, she takes off her cloak. She's wearing the bodysuit, the camo bodysuit. You see her form, her body, but she looks like badass. She's ready to kill people.
Yeah.
And that's part of the acting that comes through. Like, you get that vibe off of the human, and then she jumps into action, and it doesn't come off as fan servicey. It doesn't come off as lamely.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. I don't think I maybe didn't butt up against it as much, but I don't disagree with your observation at all. Something that I wrote down, the very first note I wrote down, and then I mention it again just a little bit further down the page, and I've already alluded to it, but if I wrote down every single thing in this movie that reappeared in the Matrix, that would be all of the notes I wrote down. It's every time like green binary code starts flashing across the screen, or someone plugs something into the back of their neck, or like there's just all of this stuff, or the spider tank sequence, which I'm sure we'll talk about more, it's framed up basically the same way as like Neo and Trinity fighting Agent Anderson, or no, he's Anderson, Agent Smith.
Yeah. Well, when we deep dive the Matrix trilogy, we will reference Ghost in the Shell quite a bit.
Constantly. It's like I said earlier, that's where the Wachowskis got their swag from.
Well, the Wachowskis not known for originality. Let's be real.
Yeah, they're remixers, skilled remixers.
Yeah.
Where do we go to next? We talked fan service quite a bit. What are we on to next?
I personally, a little note that I wrote here was that the 2029 setting seemed really far-fetched to me. It didn't. It seemed like they made in a 30-year time jump from when this movie was made, or 35 years or whatever. They made huge jumps, leaps and bounds. Like, how do you go in 30 years from having literally nothing implanted in people to complete cyborgs, to complete ocular replacements, to just everything cyber everywhere?
That's fair, obviously, because we're not under the impression that in 9 years we're going to catch up with this.
There are no cybernetics right now, aside from very rudimentary things that are used for, disabled people and whatnot.
Yeah, we're not on a course where we could put a human brain in a robot body in 9 years. Ocular implants like Batos, I think that's very achievable in 9 years.
Not to where they're superior to human eyes, whereas his were upgrades.
Yeah, he's what he can switch between infrared and yeah, that's true. I take a lot of that cyber stuff as a metaphor rather than literal. Even though we can't go and jack into the internet through a cable in the back of our head, we all carry a smartphone with us. So I feel like there is some truth to the story they're telling. It just is played out in a different way. We are constantly online. So I feel like that's the thing that they're predicting more so than the how. It's the what. It's you're constantly monitored. You're constantly online. You're always plugged into the information.
Well, that's one of the things, in our real world that has been referenced by a few really thoughtful people, like Lex Fridman. He's a podcaster, but he was a AI professor at MIT. They basically say that our cell phones are basically the first cybernetics, because you are not, it's not connected to you physically, but it's connected to you mentally and emotionally.
Exactly.
When you don't have your phone, you feel naked. You know, and so it's really one of those deals where the person who eschews, like right now, if you are a person who doesn't have a cell phone or you have a dumb phone, you're weird Luddite.
Togusa.
Yeah, you're the guy in the squad who says, I'm all human.
Yeah, I use a revolver. I have no cybernetic parts. I have a rocking mullet. Yeah, so that's you. If you have a flip phone, or you're like you stubbornly use your old Nokia, or you don't have a cell phone, you're Togusa.
I thought about that. I have the most modern Google Pixel. I thought about after this phone getting I can't remember what it's called again, but I did a bit of research on it. But they make a phone that is only texting and it has a map app. And that's all. It has nothing else.
Because I looked at you, I think you must have looked into it more recently than me. Because the last time I looked at a dumb phone, it did not have mapping, and that's
Kinda
essential.
need that, yeah.
I mean, not right now because we don't get to go
Don't
anywhere.
go anywhere.
But like, you know, when you're traveling abroad, GPS is essential. Like,
yeah. Especially you go to Japan, you need it.
Yeah, I'm in a foreign country. I can't read, you know, a third of these street signs. A lot of them are in English, but not all of them. And having Google Maps in your pocket all the time is super nice, and I wouldn't give that up.
Yeah, I've been thinking about going dumb phone with mapping as my next phone down the road, which would be a money saver, but it would Luddite me a bit. But I kind of think that might be a smart thing.
I think so too. I think while I encourage you to follow us on Facebook
And every platform.
then after you do that, delete your cell phone.
This is the only thing I encourage you to cancel is your cell phone.
Well, hold no. Can you stream podcasts on the dumb phone?
I don't think so.
Oh, we might be talking ourselves out of a
Download
job.
your iPod onto your iPod from your iTunes on your computer.
I do have an iPod still.
I still do too.
They are called podcasts.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Okay, so let's see some more notes I have here in this early part of the movie. I love all the video effects. Like whenever it switches over to like an analog video screen, and you get that sort of textural roll that comes when you videotape a video screen. That it dates it. But it does give you that feeling that you're not looking out a window, you're looking at a computer screen.
Yeah, they do that really well. And one thing that I wrote here in my What Worked For You section was, I love this cyberpunk future dystopian style. Like, this is really my jam. This art really makes me nostalgic for old school anime. It's way more grim and gritty. There's no cartooniness to it.
Yeah.
It's very adult. It's not... There's no moments where the character's face suddenly becomes a chibi version of them, and they look excited, embarrassed, sad, whatever, to accentuate the emotion.
Yeah, and that is something that's in the manga, and I think Oshii deliberately omits that, any of those sort of chibi manga tropes, in favor of a style that has more to do with Blade Runner. I have in my notes that as much as the Wachowskis steal from Ghost in the Shell, Oshii takes from Blade Runner. You see it in the architecture and the color palettes that he uses. He's very, very influenced by Blade Runner. And I think, you know, also there's a bit of Total Recall in there. But, you know, that's a Philip K. Dick adaptation, too. I think. Yeah,
Philip K. Dick is like a gold mine for, like, weird futuristic sci-fi stuff.
So I think Oshii is definitely, he's dabbling, or not, he's using the Philip K. Dick tropes to discuss the philosophy. the transhuman and Buddhist philosophies that he
Yeah,
wants to get into.
I did a bit of reading on this after I watched both movies, and this is very much a movie about Eastern philosophy,
Yeah.
which I don't totally grok. I guess I
Yeah.
can sort of intellectually glean what I can from my readings, but since I'm not steeped in it, I can't really claim to fully understand.
I think what the line there's a line when the puppet master and the major are kind of communing with each other, and the puppet master is putting forward this theory because not to get ahead of ourselves, but the puppet master, this hacker that they have been chasing, is actually an artificial intelligence that has
Yes.
become self-aware and is therefore
In
asking
in the anime.
yeah, is asking for amnesty for diplomatic immunity.
Yeah.
As a individual, and no one is inclined to give it to them. But they are literally a consciousness that's alive in the internet. You can't. They were in a body at this point, but you can't really contain something like that.
Yeah, I guess they're getting at is what makes the puppet master different from the major.
Yes. And then ultimately the puppet master makes a proposition to the major to merge their two their consciousnesses, and to create a new life form, basically to reproduce. Reproduce digitally.
And that was actually one of the things that didn't work for me. That was in my it didn't work list, was that this is a huge plot reveal. The puppet master finally interfaces with the major and is like, oh, let's merge and let's create offspring. Let's neither of us will be the same. We will both be permanently changed. And she's like, I don't want to change. And he's like, why would you not want to change? I don't understand.
Change is natural.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. And to me, it seems super anticlimactic that it's like you have this law enforcement person who's been chasing down this terrorist hacker person, and they finally meet up, and it's like, let's make a baby.
Yeah, well, let me give you my alternate take on that. Something that we've been seeing throughout the movie is the major questioning her humanity.
Sure.
And then partially this is achieved because the body that the puppet master has chosen is the same body as the major's. But she's laying there, and this is after the great spider tank battle that we should definitely talk about before we wrap it. But this is afterwards. Their bodies are destroyed, and she's looking at her reflection largely. She's seeing someone that she relates to more than the humans that she is partnered with, and she can't physically reproduce. Her human body is gone.
Yeah.
So, it takes the idea of like the biological prerogative of reproduction and makes it a spiritual one. Like the puppet master wants to reproduce, and the only way that he could reproduce, really, other than making a copy of himself, would be to integrate his code with hers.
Yeah, and they discuss that a copy isn't reproducing.
Yeah.
It's just a copy.
It's just a duplicate. He's copying himself all the time.
Yeah,
every time they destroy one of his bodies, like Ultron, and he pops up somewhere else, that's still him. It's just another copy of him. The only way to create something new is to merge their codes. And so I think it's something, maybe it does seem anticlimactic, but I think we're supposed to see this as the natural evolution. The major is becoming something beyond human. And they kind of bang you over the head with it, with this evolutionary ladder that's on the wall of the museum, that it gets bullet riddled, and you follow your way up through all the primates up to Homo sapiens, and then stop just above Homo sapien. You are witnessing the creation of a new form of life that's beyond human.
And I think that probably landed with Asian audiences but for an American audience where it's not part of our day-to-day spirituality to
Right.
it's just a little bit different. And I'm not trying to get religious here, but just sort of a Western mentality in an action movie. That's not what the bad guy wants.
Oh yeah.
Let's merge. That'd be great.
Right.
And so it's just one of those deals where I understand what it's getting. I intellectually get it.
Yeah.
And I've read about it and I understand, yes, this is cool. This anime is an art film.
Oh, definitely.
It's not an action movie. And
it's like disguised as an action movie.
yeah, there are so many art house elements in here. I have a lot of little notes here about different arty parts, but ultimately it's wrapped around an action movie, and I'm just not compelled by that version, that climax, because the climax in the live action version of the movie is completely different.
Oh, for sure.
It's not even the same ending. Yeah. And I found the other one much more compelling. And so I think, and we'll get into the live action, but I guess some of the other things before we kind of wrap on the live action or on the anime is this was influenced by things I like, by like Blade Runner and whatnot. It influenced things I like Shadowrun, like Altered Carbon, like
Altered Carbon, yeah.
The Avery Cates book series, which is a cyberpunk thing where they have a religion called the Electric Church that is peopled by what amounts to brains and cyborgs.
Definitely.
Where they completely change out. And I love the Avery Cates series. Definitely Google that, check it out, get the audiobooks. It's good. And I love the overall aesthetic, like the art in this. When I was a teenager, I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I loved that that whole deal with the rundown cityscape, this just darkness, and it's really beat up. And then you look up and there's a shiny skyline of high rises. Yeah. And it's funny because on my Facebook page from my trip to Japan last year, I actually have a picture where me and Carrie are standing in a park, and we're surrounded by green, and it's beautiful, and there's a koi pond, and there's this really big turtle and everything. And then you look up, and there's a beautiful shining skyline of skyscrapers behind us in Tokyo.
So you're that's by the palace, I'm guessing?
It's actually the park that's not far from the Tokyo Tower.
Okay, and so you're looking at the Ginza, like the financial district.
Yeah. It's behind us, and I composed that picture that way on purpose because I thought it was a really cool juxtaposition. And obviously, this isn't a beautiful naturescape with high rises. This is like a gutterscape.
Yeah,
and I love that.
I love that setting too, and I love this is really, and I kind of wrote this as sort of like the pinnacle and the end of an era of anime, because computer animation after this starts playing a much bigger part. This movie itself has even been, the director has gone back and added computer animation to it as though it needed it, which it did not.
Does it make me a Luddite that I like the old way better than the computer way?
I don't know if it does, but I feel the same way. I mean, this is when I like think about what I love about anime, this movie embodies it. Like Akira embodies that style also.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like I love the practical light effects that they do, where they let the light from the light table shine up through the cell and it makes the lens flare. Like there's just certain things that are very analog, very painted animation, that even if you can recreate them digitally, your eyes don't see it the same. Like your eyes register it as false.
Yeah, and I've had this discussion with friends about music, other musicians, and there's a thing like you can create, like for example, like the most recent Doom video game, it's like gent heavy metal guitar playing metal. None of it is on a guitar. It's all digitally made. But I can hear it. I know that is not a guitar.
That's not a real, it's a synthesizer.
That is not it. That's not the thing. And so for anyone who's a fan of a thing, like you're a fan of Japanese animation, and I am too. I'm not as much of a weeb as you, but I try. Same thing goes with the heavy metal thing. I know that's not real. It doesn't sound like the thing. Those are not strings being depressed on a fretboard. That is not a physical thing plucking the string. It sounds different. There's no way to simulate the human aspect of the creation of that art. And same thing, it's music, it's analog. I use a analog amplifier and passive pickups. I just don't like the sound of the fake ones. And it also applies to animation. Yes. I like the old way better.
There's something when something is, and this is like the fundamental thing about what makes us enthusiastic about things, what we're the things that inspire us to talk about it in the podcast is craft, right? We talk about craft beer, we talk about crafted things, and you can craft something with a computer for sure.
Yeah, because I'm not going to discount digital art.
I would still, I'd still be in Durotan's hut last episode.
Yeah, for sure.
If it was up to me, I'd be going frame by frame through Warcraft because I think that movie is beautiful, and I think this movie is beautiful. Like I see the same level of craft in both of them, just in a different medium.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. The crafted nature of things is really what speaks to me. When I don't know how to say it without seeming cheesy, but when something is made with love, you can feel it.
Oh, absolutely. No, the power of love. I agree with that.
And so there's two other things. I only had two more notes on the anime. One is the music.
Oh, yes.
It was scored by Kenji Kawai.
Yeah.
And holy crap, so good.
I love that. I love I don't know if it's a children's choir or if it's female vocalists, but there's something really haunting about the choral element of those.
I noted that I really liked the kind of modern electronic vibes that were combined with classical Japanese elements.
Oh, definitely.
Man, that just spoke to me.
It reminded me, it's a different composer, but it reminded me quite a bit of the score to Akira, which is also like one of my like Mount Rushmore anime.
Yeah, it's classic. We should probably deep dive that, but we run the risk of becoming an anime podcast.
We run the risk of becoming a meandering podcast that doesn't have a focus at all.
We are our own genre of me-anime.
I don't have a lot more notes on here other than let's see, the Basset Hound.
Okay.
I thought the Basset Hound. I was overthinking it. I thought it was symbolizing something because the Basset Hound is on the bridge and the Basset Hound is in the trash man's picture. Yeah. And then the Basset Hound is like at Bato's apartment. Oshi has a Basset Hound and he just likes him.
Is that it?
That's it.
Nice.
He just likes Basset Hounds. And
I like Basset Hounds.
Yeah. So they appear in the movie and they appear, I guess, in a lot of his anime. It doesn't mean anything. I was really let down. I was like, funny. What does the Basset Hound represent? Like, I thought it was some sort of riddle I needed to solve.
So the one last thing I want to say about the anime is I loved the tank battle.
Oh, the spider tank.
Yeah, the spider tank. The action sequences were my favorite part of this art film. And I guess that makes me lame. But I liked it. It was like that tank battle was so cool. And I love it when the major, and I'm a big fan of Bato. Like that character really speaks to me. He's so loyal. I love that kind of thing. Like he's written so well.
Bato is like the ultimate wingman. Like that's the guy you want in your corner.
Yeah, Bato he is awesome. I love that guy.
He saves her ass and like goes out on a limb. At the end, like her body gets destroyed. He goes and gets her a black market child body, which implications of which are dark.
Yeah, that's
like,
weird.
Like that was
They
one
have
where he's
child
like,
bodies.
he was like, this is the only thing I could find on the black market, and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, let's not think too hard about why there are child bodies on the black market.
But
the action sequences in that movie were great. I love it when the Major is fighting. I love it, which is strange. I keep calling her the Major. She's called multiple things. They call her. The English dub actors will call her Motoko, and then in the other one they call her Motoko. And they also call her the Major, and then she also has an English name, Mira. And so I just keep calling her the Major because she has like 4 names.
Major is the most consistent one.
Yeah, and I like that character a lot. She's really cool, and I like her action sequences, and I like Bato, and I really love Aramaki. And so as far as the anime goes, those 3 characters really did it for me. And that tank battle and that final sequence, the action piece of it was it was the climax of the movie, and it was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, that's a really beautifully animated scene. And Masamune Shiro, I was reading an interview with him, which I shared it on our Facebook, and he was talking about how, lots Japanese boys and like geeky Japanese boys are kind of like tend to be obsessed with insects or just arthropods in general, because you've got some really cool native bugs in Japan, like those rhinoceros beetles and stuff.
And they had huge bees there.
Yeah, and so. Insectoid or arachnid type mechs are a big part of his artwork. Like they play a lot bigger part in the manga, and I'm glad they managed to find a space for one of them, like kind of the big daddy one of them
for sure.
And it's a German built cyber tank, I think is how they describe it,
something like that.
And that is just a really great sequence, and it kind of leads into one of my favorite sequences, which is the Major pulling the brain out of the cyber tank.
Oh, where she destroys her own body doing it. Yeah.
So on the way to the museum where this scene happens, she walks past like a department store filled with undressed mannequins.
Yeah.
And the mannequins are like armless and legless, and it rests on them just long enough that it's thematically important.
Yeah, like she sort of sees herself there.
Yes. And then when she is trying to stop the spider tank, and she's literally like pulling the brain out of the tank, she like overflexes all of her musculature and ends up ripping her arms off. Like she does.
Yeah, she's like tearing the muscles in her back, and she actually tears the external flesh.
Yeah,
it's really dark.
It's so like you said, grim earlier. It's so grim and it's so visceral. Like this idea of like over throttling something, or like taking the thing beyond its what it's rated for.
Yeah, she redlined her body and didn't care.
And that is like, in the visceral intensity of that scene carries through. You feel it. You feel like you're ripping your own arms watching it.
So I take it one further than that, in that yes, that scene was extremely like visceral, and it made you really relate to the Major. But in the 2017 version, ScarJo doing that exact same scene, you add the human acting element, and it just takes it next level, because she has fury and she has anguish, and she just really sells it. Like, it's so good.
That's one of my favorite scenes in both movies.
Yeah, it's really good.
There's a segment to talk about that, Dave.
Is there? What worked for you? Yeah. Personal highlight. So let's talk about unless you have anything else, let's talk about the live action.
The last thing, there's like an immigration anxiety theme that kind of runs through the movie. Even though it's taking place in Hong Kong, I think Hong Kong is kind of a stand-in for an international city where many countries come together.
Sure.
There is this sort of anxiety about the rise of China that I think is it's like a secondary theme of the movie that they're sort of anxious about being overwritten by Chinese culture, and I saw it, and I think it needs to get mentioned, but I don't think it was like the primary focus.
Yeah, it seemed like sort of a sub-element that I don't think a lot of American viewers would even pick up.
Yeah, probably not.
It seemed clearly for the Japanese audience.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I got.
All right. Well, so let's talk about the 2017 version of this film, which was directed by Rupert Sanders and written by Jamie Moss, William Wheeler, and Aaron Kruger. So they had to get 3 writers in order to adapt an adaptation. Interesting, right?
Probably, like, I'm going to say, you said there's 3 of them?
Yeah.
2/3 are a team, and 1/3 is a script doctor, or something like that. Like, probably the writing team, or vice versa. One guy wrote it, and then the 2 script doctors took a turn at it, or vice versa. That's, without looking anything up, that's my take on what that means.
Well, and let's talk about money. This the remake cost $110 million to make, and it grossed just shy of 170. So it did not double its money. But it did. It was a commercial success, even though it wasn't critically acclaimed.
Is that including international?
That's worldwide.
Okay.
Whereas if you compare it to the anime that had a $10 million budget, its grossing worldwide was $43 million. It quadrupled. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, obviously it made $33 million, whereas the other one made roughly $60 million. But the return on investment percentage-wise is kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think we should, because I don't want to dwell on it, let's get the elephant out of the room, and that is the whitewashing of the major. I understand why it happened, and I understand why they thought they kind of had a pass to do it, but I obviously representation-wise, I think it was the wrong call, and just like off the top of my head, Rinko Kikuchi from Pacific Rim would have probably been a better casting choice, but you would never get the international money that got invested in this movie with her as the lead.
So I did a bit of a personal deep dive on this topic in the internet. I went down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and I did a lot of Googling and then clicking links and Googling other things and talking and reading about it, because my initial note that I wrote was, I'm not sure why they didn't get Asian actors to do this. And then I started Googling it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I really like Scarlett Johansson. I think she did a great job, and I don't want to take away from her performance, but it was a whitewash of a Japanese character. Now, obviously, you could have had a really good Japanese actress do this, and when I was reading about this, it seems strange. The backlash against this was almost entirely American.
Yes.
In Asia, it was not considered controversial in the least for a couple of reasons. One of them was because Scarlett Johansson is an international superstar, and they understand that is what you do to make money.
Right.
You put the biggest name you can, and there's not a single Japanese actress that has a higher worldwide profile than ScarJo.
Correct.
So they did that, and Japanese people seem to understand that. But then the other thing, the more nuanced version that seemed really strange to me as an American man, is that the beauty standard for Japanese women in Japan is that of a white beauty standard.
Right.
And I was reading this article by a Japanese woman, and I should have the information.
We'll link
here
it
to
on
give you.
Facebook.
Yeah, but she was talking about that, how makeup is marketed toward a white standard, where they try to have Japanese women do their makeup and hair like white women, and so to them it wasn't strange at all that they would do this. And then the third reason, which didn't land in America at all, but seemed obvious to everyone in Asia, was that this is a movie about transhumanism and bodies don't matter.
Right.
It's 100% replaceable. And so the actual shell is irrelevant. This is a story about the ghost.
Right. And I think that is why, all the reasons why they felt artistically and commercially why they could do it.
For sure.
The other side of that is, an Asian American person, the people in Asia, in Japan, in China, have overwhelmingly Asian media. They can,
of course.
Japan makes a lot of media, Korea makes a lot of media, India makes a lot of media. They are not hurting for Asian representation in Asia.
Exactly.
So there's no thing where someone says, I've never seen myself represented in a movie.
So when a Japanese girl is like, I'm going to watch this American movie remake about Ghost in the Shell, it's not shocking at all that it's a white lady.
Yeah.
Because it's an American film. Whereas Japanese Americans, and I'm not trying to speak for them in any way.
Right.
It definitely is not the case here that we have the representation that Asian people have.
Exactly. And so you take someone like The Major, because Ghost in the Shell, because of the level of quality, it's one of those things where you have a visible Asian female character. I mean, there's not a ton of them that have broken through, like Mulan and Motoko. There's not a ton of them. So it's a major slap, and a pun not intended, slap in the face to Asian American people that is just kind of baffling in Asia itself. Because I watched, I follow that Japanese guy Yuta on YouTube, and I know your wife Carrie also subscribes to his channel. He went and kind of did person on the streets interviews and showed them the trailer, and showing it to Japanese women on the street in Nerd Town. What's the Nerd Town in Tokyo? Akihabara.
Okay, yeah.
Akihabara. He goes to Akihabara and shows it to people, and everyone just goes, "Oh, she looks beautiful." That was their take on it. That's a major American movie star, and she looks great as the character.
Sure.
So that's that. We've said enough on the subject.
Yeah, my initial impression was, why not Asian? And then after deep diving it, I understand why they didn't do it. And I'm not going to make a value judgment on it because I'm not part of, I'm not part of the Asian American community, but that was my initial impression.
Yeah.
So as far as this movie goes, I really loved it. It was so good. I saw it in the theater when it came out.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I went because remember I saw Ghost in the Shell on VHS, and so I had that. I'm that softy for nostalgic stuff, and even as much as I say I want sweet new content and new stuff, I love remakes of my favorite things because it gives me my opportunity to either like it because it did a good job, or it gives me the chance to be angry at it for ruining what was perfect already.
And you don't want to miss that.
It's a win-win.
So I thought I started the last segment with this or something similar, and I want to do this again because it starts with some text also. And it says, in the future, the line between human and machine is disappearing. Achievements in technology allow humans to enhance themselves with cybernetic parts. Honka Robotics, funded by the government, is developing a military operative that will blur the line. They will combine the strongest attributes of human and robots. So, right off the bat, this gets into what my problem with this movie is versus the anime.
Okay.
I wrote down multiple times, I'm being spoon-fed the information. like it's much more, like you said, the other movie is an art house film, kind of dressed up like an action movie. This is the opposite.
Yeah, this is 100% what I came to the same conclusion. That was a weird sentence. I basically think this is a cyberpunk action movie that has a philosophical element behind it. Mm-hmm. The other movie is an art house movie exploring a philosophical topic through the medium of action.
Correct. That was my take. Just right from the introduction, I felt that way.
Well, and they start off really differently, and it's an important difference. In the beginning of the anime, she's jumping off the high rise, etc. But she's a member of Section 9, and Batu has his eyes, and Bato has his eyes. Sorry, and the whole deal. Whereas in this one, in the remake, she's the victim of a terrorist attack or some violence, and her brain is rescued from her body.
Yeah, we open with, it starts with
it's like a creation scene.
Yeah, we see her kind of out of focus being wheeled in on a gurney, and then you get it's very similar to kind of the second scene of the anime where you see the body being assembled. Mm-hmm. It has the same beats as that, but you get the impression that this is not like a maintenance thing. This is the body being assembled for the very first time.
This is a rescue, and it's extremely on the nose. They really do give it to you straight up.
Yeah.
They even use the word ghost in the monologue that's going on.
Yeah.
And so you're right. They definitely are spoon feeding you the information, but on a certain level in the anime, a lot of things weren't clear.
Yeah, that's true.
And in this movie, a lot of things are clear. And that's true. That's nice.
There is something to be said for clarity in storytelling. Like a story that can be easily digested by the audience.
And after her kind of creation scene, which is really just an intro credit roll almost.
Right.
Then it jumps to her being a crime fighter in Section 9, and it goes to the building jump-off scene where she fights the cyber geisha, just like in the anime.
Yeah, the cyber geisha is a creation for this movie, but it feels very in place in the world. Like it's got that sort of insectoid, like
spidery.
Yeah. So it looks very much like a Shiro design, and I really appreciated that. And the beats of this sequence play out very much the same way they did in the anime.
It's a more interesting scene. I know that's probably heresy, but it's way more interesting than a guy talking about his diplomatic immunity. It's mob bosses talking to somebody important who's not clear why they're important in the movie, but they have these cyber geishas, which are really cool looking and really interesting to look at. And you have all these people with cybernetics and all these security agents with clearly obvious cybernetics. Yeah. And then the attack of Section 9, it's super cool.
Yeah, you're looking at some sort of corporate espionage thing. You got I wrote down it's the bad guy from The Crow, right? It's
it kind of, I don't know if it's the same actor, but it looks like him.
I think it's the same actor. Yeah, and
man, I love The Crow.
Right,
that's like my favorite '90s. Like that's what '90s Dave tried to look like. Brandon Lee.
So here we go. We got what was it called? Top Dollar or Top? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I
whatever. Know. Jolly pirate nicknames.
We know when we deep dive that movie.
So we got the bad guy from The Crow, and he's trying to schmooze like an African prime minister or king or something.
Clearly some top dog in a small nation.
He wants to sell his cyber goods in their country, and then all of a sudden the androids that are serving them turn on them, and the major drops in and just cleans house.
And it's awesome.
It is. It's a longer sequence than in the anime.
It's much longer.
Because in the anime, she just sort of drops past and does a quick assassination and gives them a wave and a like a metaphorical middle finger and disappears again.
Yeah, I didn't write down the exact number of minutes, but this is almost half an hour longer than the anime.
Yes, definitely.
It's like 27 minutes or something.
I definitely, watching it, had the feeling like, and the movie is over, and no, it's not.
Yeah.
There's more story.
And so after that initial scene, so in my head, I watched them back to back. I don't know about you, but I watched them in the same day, and the initial scene was really cool in the live action movie because there's something to be said for set designers and costume designers and the lighting people. Like, unsung heroes are lighting people.
Oh, for sure.
And they just did so good in this movie. Like, and so you don't have that in the animation. Well, you have really great animation, and it's all really intentional because obviously they can stare at each cell picture by picture and do things like the museum scene with the evolution poster or whatever. But in this, you have, a dozen creative minds, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, the art design, and this is Weta Workshop does the special effects. And, if we ever go to conventions again, they have a life-size major that they always have in their booth.
Oh, yeah. That'd be cool.
And it looks like they've got Scarlett Johansson in a glass case. Like, it's almost disconcerting.
A little eerie.
Like, you're like, did you actually duplicate her and leave her in this glass case?
So one thing that occurred to me after that scene was it jumped to a driving scene. There's a lot of driving scenes in this movie, and I love it. I'm a car person.
Driving is good for exposition.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna love these cars too. I'm already predicting that.
I have notes about these cars. Yeah, like I don't know if I've talked about this at all on the podcast, but I'm a big fan of cars. I drive a Subaru BRZ and I love it. It's a nice little sports car, and I've always loved cars. My brothers are car guys. Hats off to them for helping me get into it as a kid. But I appreciate these cars, and so I loved how in that next scene they have a boxy armored truck, just like the anime, but they made it in real life.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Like, it was such an homage to the actual, like, the anime. That armored truck looks so badass.
The aesthetic of this movie, that's my very first note, is that they did such a great job recreating the aesthetic of the anime.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very much, everything is styled in a 1980s cyberpunk.
Yeah.
So
100%.
all the cars, everything looks like a DeLorean or Lamborghini had a baby with each other.
It's so funny. I wrote the DeLorean / Lambo looking sports car is really cool.
Yeah.
I love it. And they took so many beats from Blade Runner, who kind of innovated this vibe. And for me, that's gold, And then there's a motorcycle that the Major drives. I'm just talk about all the vehicles real quick. The motorcycle that the Major drives later on, it almost has like an Akira vibe to it. It's
certainly.
It's so cool. But did you know that's a real bike you can buy in real life?
Oh, who makes it?
Honda.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I should have written down the name of it, but if you go to the Honda website, it's for sale. Like, it's a sport bike that you sit back on, and it has like the angular look to it, and crazy enough, it has an automatic transmission. So even like a novice rider can handle it. It's a really cool bike.
I wonder if, and this, not to tangent on it too much, but if ScarJo actually rides motorcycles, because she does in the Avengers movies too.
I bet she does. It's not that hard to ride a bike.
She probably had to learn at least the basics of it for some establishing shots, even if she doesn't do the stunt stuff.
And then they have stunt women do it for her, the crazy stuff.
Interesting.
But yeah, the motorcycle's super cool. They obviously changed the Honda a little bit to cyber it up a little.
Oh yeah, it's 9 years in the future.
Yeah, it's 9 years from now. But that is a bike you can buy. But the DeLorean Lambo combo thing that Aramaki has later in the movie, I was drooling. I literally paused it so I could look at the car, and I was just like, "Oh, it's so cool."
I knew that when I saw that car, when he's walking out to the car with his briefcase, and he knows we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But he knows that they're burnt. Section 9 is about to get greased, and he's walking out there, and I saw that car. I was like, "Oh, Dave's gonna be super into that car."
Yeah, because I love sports cars. So I was just like, "Man, that's so cool! I want one of those."
So something I liked right off the bat is, if you've watched the anime, which has been kind of retread a few times, or read the manga, everyone's recognizable immediately. All of the characters look like themselves.
They really do.
And it's like, oh, there's Togusa. I know his rockin' mullet. There is Bato. Even though he doesn't have the cybernetic eyes yet, he's still kind of bug-eyed, like in this way that, like, I didn't think they were ever going to give him the cybernetic eyes. He was just going to look like that, and I was still satisfied with
I would have been fine with that too. Like he's like a bulky white guy with kind of a crew cut almost, like a weird hair. It's a very specific haircut.
Yeah, it's like a flat top into a mullet, which is like kind of a hot haircut at the moment.
It's not hot.
It is, like, so that's I wrote that in my notes. Is this movie what brought back mullets?
There are several mullets.
Because all of the haircuts in this movie I see on, like, barbers' Instagrams. Like, and the timeline, was it 2017?
Something like that.
Yeah, it
came out in 17, so it would have been designed in 15.
Yeah, but so, like, people saw it in 17, and then when it came to digital is probably when it really goes wide.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel almost comfortable saying this movie brought back the mullet.
Oh, wow.
Because the haircuts are really specific, and we could get into looking at barber Instagrams, but I see people doing these haircuts now.
So I should take a picture of Bato and take it to my barber and say, this is me.
This.
I want this.
Platinum blonde.
Yeah, instead of my black hair.
Flat top with party in the back.
That would be amazing. So speaking of style, that kind of goes right next to my next beat was the major, when she's like walking around and she's talking to Bato, and they do a lot of discussion. Like they do a lot of telling, but in a showing way. Like, I don't know, it works.
They're showing you the world while telling you what's going on.
Yeah, it's really cool, but I don't know what it was. I guess it's just my age, but the fact that she's got that haircut with the long in the front, short in the back,
asymmetrical bob,
and she's got the flight jacket. She has, the denim jeans that are rolled up so that you can see her combat boots. You can see she's got long sleeved shirt coming out of the jacket that goes over her thumbs and down the back of her hand. It's so 1995, 96.
It's very much the era that the anime came from.
I love it. It's so good. Like, I love that style. Like, it looks so cool.
She, in the pre-internet, like, before you could cyber stalk people, she was the cool girl in the punk scene that you didn't know, but everyone was aware of.
Yeah.
Like, she looks like that.
That's a golden haircut for me. I mean, like, your wife has that haircut sometimes. Sometimes
she has.
Yeah, it's a really good. Shout out to Lisa. It's a really good haircut, and I really like the style, the jeans, the flight jacket, the whole deal.
Yeah,
and they really pull that off, and I think that that's really good. And then right around that time, kind of changing gears, they show us the first iteration of the cloaking technology, but it's done with special effects, obviously, not animation. And
is this with the trash man? Or no, what?
I can't remember exactly what scene it was, but we get a really good look at the major just cloaking herself. Like, I'm not really, my notes aren't beat for beat. They're just stuff that stuck out to me.
Gotcha.
And I thought that they pulled it off, and it looked as good as the anime.
Yeah.
It looked really convincing. Like, it was very Predator, and but it was better than the Predator.
And
because newer, obviously.
Something, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but to talk about, like, the kind of circle of influence, a lot of the cityscapes put me in the mind of the Wachowskis' adaptation of Speed Racer.
Oh, I didn't see that movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of a movie a lot of people slept on, and it's considered a big failure, but it's actually a really solid film. But I found that sort of circular influence really interesting, because a lot of the stuff that would seem Matrixy is maybe downplayed in this. Like when you see binary text starting to scroll across the screen is in orange instead of green. Because green, you just think of the Matrix. And
and this was made after the Matrix.
Yeah, and so they don't want to be being compared to the Matrix when they're they're adapting the source material.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where it's kind of a weird thing where they don't want to seem like they're derivative when really the other one's derivative.
Yeah, it's like John Carter was that way too.
Sure.
John Carter, everyone compared it to Star Wars, but that book is literally 100 years old.
Yeah. John Carter is the OG in Star Wars. I mean, anybody. Let's be real. As I wouldn't go so far as to call us film critics, but we're film fans,
enthusiasts.
We're enthusiasts.
Stay on brand.
Sorry. As enthusiasts, anybody who thinks Star Wars is the originator of anything is not an enthusiast.
Yeah, you really have not. You've never seen a Western, a samurai movie.
You've never checked out John Carter. I mean, like, Star Wars is really just it's a dumpster filled with influences and no original content.
Yeah. Like any Tarantino movie is that way.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's a lot of things that we really love that aren't particularly original. They're just good remixes. And this included, because another thing I've compared it to is RoboCop.
Oh,
I think
I like RoboCop.
This leans really heavy on the tropes of RoboCop because you have this cyborg cop, and you have a one big technology company that seems to control everything in Honko Robotics.
What is that? Cyberdyne Industries?
No, that's Terminator.
Oh, my bad.
It's Omni Consumer Products and RoboCop.
And when did RoboCop come out? Was that before the manga was written?
It would have been. They would have been pretty contemporary with each other, like 89. I mean, we could look that up, but
that's really good radio.
But yeah, they're fairly contemporary to each other. I think RoboCop is spinning out of the same Philip K. Dick stuff that inspired Ghost in the Shell originally.
And let's not forget Arthur C. Clarke, who inspired Philip K. Dick. Arthur C. Clarke, the OG sci-fi predictor of things, and who predicted satellites and who predicted cell technology, etc.
Gotcha.
If you want to get really old on sci-fi, Arthur C. Clarke.
But what about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Yeah, well, that's that. Yeah,
H.G. Wells has something to say about science fiction.
It's Mary Wollstonecraft. Yeah. Anyway, so I really like this movie, and I guess I have a few more notes here. We already covered the character of Bato.
Yeah.
And that I love that guy, and the actor, and I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Pilu Asbeck.
I think Bake. Like the A-E combo is like the same as Asgard.
Interesting. Well, he was awesome.
Yes.
That actor was great. He really he lived up to the anime version of Bato in that he was like the most loyal buddy. Like he clearly loved the Major.
Yeah, in like that good like platonic bro way.
Yeah, it was like he was her brother. Yeah. And he wanted her to live, and he wanted her to be okay, and he had more regard for her safety than she did.
Yeah, and not in a paternalistic, like, I need to protect the damsel. Like,
oh, no.
You're like, wow, he really respects her, regards her as an equal, and isn't trying to bang her, and that is good.
Yeah. It's like you should be able to care about a woman in a non-sexual way, and I think Bato is a great version of that character, and I think it happens in other movies and shows. It's just not remarked upon, but in most movies, like most Hollywood movies, they would have hooked up at the end or something,
something like that,
or he would have been pining for her the whole time. I don't know, and it wasn't that way. It just seemed wholesome. It seemed good, and it seemed real. It didn't seem fake, and I like that.
Yeah.
My next note basically was that Scarlett Johansson not only did an amazing job in the action scenes, which she's adept she's very adept at doing those scenes. She has amazing stunt doubles as well, but where she really shined was the dramatic scenes, like when she had that moment with the prostitute, and she was talking to her and trying to get the information and trying to like relate to her. Those moments are really more important than the action. And then when she interacts with the puppet master, it's like it's better than the anime. Like, it's way better. The character of the puppet master is way more three-dimensional. And so this is where it diverges in a big way. He was not an AI that achieved sentience. He was a previous iteration of the Major. He was a failed experiment in human brain implanting into a cyborg body.
Yes, and honestly, like, this is where my read on the movie kind of changed, because, you know, I had been kind of, up until this point, feeling like this is a dumbed down version.
You were hating.
I'm not hating. I was enjoying myself, but I was
diminishing
it. Okay. Yeah, I was sort of regarding it as less than the anime, and I do want to like take a pause on that, the scene with her and the sex worker, because they whitewashed the Major, but they didn't do the queer erasure of the Major.
Yeah.
The way she is in the manga, you know, she's pansexual. Like, the body, you know, we've talked about this before, the body doesn't really matter to her that much. She makes sort of like connections with people on the ghost level.
Sure.
So I like that scene where she goes and has an intimate scene with a female character, and then she has, you know, an intimacy with the puppet master. They call him Kuze in this, played by Michael Pitt.
Yeah, like they kind of just invented that name.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. Maybe it's something off, you know, that's sort of mentioned in the manga and I've missed it or something. But
sure.
Yeah, but this is in this moment when he kind of drops the truth bomb on her. Really made me kind of sit up in my chair like, oh, now this has become something different.
Yeah, they polished the story, and they expanded upon it, and they made it a little more believable.
And I think this idea that we're alluding to, and let's just get into it, that Honko Robotics just basically abducts people from what they call the lawless zone, which is like an anarchist
it's like the Barons from Shadowrun. It's just it's sort of it's
autonomous collective.
Yeah,
like it's a place where squatters are, and Motoko Kusanagi and Kuze are essentially like activists. They're like these sort of they're like monkey wrenchers, you know, that are kind of pushing back against like this invasion of electronics into people's privacy and private lives.
Yeah.
And they get abducted and brainwashed and made into tools of the same system that they're resisting. And I thought, like, that's super compelling. And,
yeah, for sure. And it's believable.
Yeah, and none of that is present in any of the other versions that I'm aware of. So I was like, oh, this is really a very interesting twist on the story.
Yeah, they made her backstory into something that you can relate to as a person. Whereas in the anime, she just started off a super cop.
Yeah,
and
where she came from is not that important.
It's not even really mentioned because the struggle is ghost versus body, humanity versus machine. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really have to do with her personal struggle of who she was before she was abducted. And that's really interesting. And I also find it really compelling how they imprint fake names and personalities and everything over top of them. Like the first time she said her name is Mira Killian. I thought they were totally whitewashing the movie more by replacing her name with an Anglo name. But as it turns out, that was just another layer on top of the layers. When I finally figured it out, that they were actually adding more complexity than the anime, I actually thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think ultimately it does add to it. It was a little bit of a controversy. I remember when they were doing like the press for this, because she was saying, I'm not playing Motoko Kusanagi, I'm playing Mira Killian. And then that ended up being just sort of like a red herring.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think it's an interesting way of framing it, and I think the idea that she was like sort of this anarchist, resistor, and then she's been turned into a weapon of the state. I think that's a really interesting concept, and it's a new layer to the character that didn't exist previously.
Yeah, it kind of reeks of that kind of government conspiracy theory, hideous thoughts. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but you know how like there's those conspiracy theories out there online where people say, they charge rioters and protesters and freedom fighters with felonies so that they can't vote in the future because they're trying to change the voting demographics and minimize those people's impacts. This is sort of that, but taken to the next level. Not only is she taken out of the resistance pool, but she's made a force of the oppressor.
Yeah, it gives you that sense of they're controlling both sides of things. Like the resistance is only allowed to exist to the extent that they want it to be there as a boogeyman.
Yeah, for sure. It's like one of those deals where the CIA controls a certain amount of criminal activity, allegedly.
Or how the FBI, sold crack and sold weapons.
Yeah,
not allegedly, actually true.
Yeah, that way they're controlling it and they know all the players involved, that kind of a deal. So that's sort of, the movie reflecting sort of real life stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's layering on a few more tropes. I think we missed before this moment. There's this sort of homage to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where the major goes and confronts Dr. Scardo, who's been sort of like her like maternal replacement figure during this time, and it's very much like straight out of Frankenstein. She's sort of looming over the doctor while she's sleeping in her bed. And I thought, I have a tattoo of Frankenstein, so that's a big reference for me.
Yeah, I liked that because I've always been a fan of Frankenstein. I was in a band called Mary Shelley, and I thought that was cool, and I thought it was another value add for the movie that the anime didn't really cash in on.
Yeah, and so there's not a lot more to cover here. From there, we go on to a really great recreation of the spider tank scene.
Yeah, it was very, very similar.
Yeah, and it especially that scene where the major like overclocks herself, pulling the brain out of the tank is just like an excellent recreation, a chef kiss.
Yeah, but it was better because it had ScarJo acting, and her actual humanity in the scene trumps the animation, in my opinion.
So, have we talked about the mom? I don't think we've mentioned. After she gets this revelation, she goes to visit Motoko Kusanagi's mother.
Yeah, I liked that scene. It was interesting because having gone to Tokyo recently, I remember seeing those interesting kind of cemetery places that are not like cemeteries in America. And also those really dense housing situations that you see when you get out of downtown and you kind of get into the side areas in Tokyo. It was really cool seeing that in the movie. And I liked how they made that mother character extremely realistic. Like she had preserved Motoko's room and all her stuff and all of that. I just thought I thought it was a pretty good, compelling, and humanizing scene.
Yeah, it took me a little more to warm up to it than I guess you did, because I thought maybe the mother seemed a little too open. But I think you and we talked a little bit off mic about this, and you sort of gave me a different perspective on it, and I get it a little more.
Yeah, it was just one of those deals for me where they were taking a character who is, I wouldn't say one-dimensional in the movie, but she's not the most complex person because she's mentally messed up. She's rediscovering herself.
Yeah.
And this is like a good story element for rediscovery.
Yeah, and what you said before, you said that her ghost recognized her daughter's ghost.
Yeah.
And it really, I was just sort of hanging up on that. Mom's not going to welcome this stranger into her house, but it's like there's something about her that she connects with, like spiritually, and I think that's really true.
And I think sometimes there are people that you meet in this world, and even if they're like a stranger, but something is there, and you can kind of feel it in the moment when you first meet them.
Yeah.
And I know we've all kind of experienced that with one person or another. And sometimes, you meet and you feel this weird connection, and then you separate and you never see them again. But sometimes you don't, and those become the important people in your life. I feel like this was one of those moments.
Yeah, and so they have this sort of reconnection there, and then after the big battle, she goes and meets her mother at the cemetery and says, "You don't have to come here anymore."
Yeah, and she was basically like, "Yeah, I already knew that."
Yeah, and you talking about the Japanese cemetery, it's just so like people aren't necessarily buried in the cemeteries. They're cremated, and then they're in this little ossuary sort of thing, and family members come and light incense and talk to their loved ones, and it's it's really, if you ever get the chance to go to any of those places, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, they're really cool. I mean, we're both big fans of Japan and Japanese culture, so definitely recommend traveling there. So let's go ahead and kind of wrap this up. Did you have any like personal highlights? Like, what was the coolest thing in the movie for you?
I think my personal highlights are those scenes that pay homage to the original movie, because I think they're just executed really well. Particularly the opening drop-in sequence, but also the fight out in the canal with the garbage man, and then the spider tank one.
Okay, so I liked all of those things too. I kind of I was thinking, I love the action scenes. They're all done really well. I love the cars. All of the cars and motorcycles and trucks and everything are awesome in this movie. But I think the best part of it is the acting. I think it was just really, really done well. I feel like the characters were super relatable.
Oh, definitely. And everyone is instantly recognizable as the character they're portraying.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's never a trying to figure it out. When you see Takeshi Kitano, you know exactly who that is.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So let's go ahead and give some star ratings on the anime and then the 2017 remake. So what do you give the anime?
This is a classic. It's on the Mount Rushmore of anime, and I think it's a 4-star anime.
Okay, well, I put it more like I loved it when I was young, and when I watched it again, there were a lot of parts that I thought were very, very pass over, skippable. They were a little bit gratuitous, a little fan servicey, maybe stuck in the era. So at the time I loved it, and I kind of wish I hadn't gone back and rewatched it.
Oof.
It's a 2 3/4 star movie.
Oh,
It's really just not that great nowadays.
Rotten Tomatoes would disagree with you.
Well, it's also people rate things with their heart. It's like we go back to how we rated Dune. It tried a lot of things, and it was at the moment it was really important, but now in the grand scheme of cinema, it just doesn't hold up.
Well, I mean, that's your take on it. We're not always going to agree. Well, what about the remake? What sort of rating do you give that?
I give the remake 3 stars. It is somewhat better than the anime because of the acting. The story is very much the same, but they added some complexities and layers to it with the whole freedom fighter thing, the puppet master actually having an identity rather than just being kind of a villain for villain's sake. They made it more of a movie that was understandable and I guess layered, as opposed to the anime, which was an art film.
Yeah, that's a controversial opinion to take, that the remake is better than the anime.
Well, I mean, it's a modern action movie versus an antiquated art film.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a little bit stronger than you, which surprises me. I was going to go 3.5 stars, and that's, to me, that's a sort of standard comic book movie rating. Like it
Standard, just decent movie.
Yeah, it's better than decent. Like, I could watch this again. But it's not particularly remarkable. It's like this, it ticked the boxes that it needed to. I probably would have gone higher, but the ending where she, after discovering all this stuff about herself, just goes right back to working for Section 9 and being a cop, I really feel like it was a letdown of the story they were telling, and it's more just like setting up a potential sequel than it is actually resolving the plot.
I would so much rather watch a sequel where Motoko is a vigilante freedom fighter than a cop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I'm reading it wrong, and maybe Section 9 goes rogue and
they become the A-team.
Yeah, if you need them and you can find them.
See, I'd be all for that, but I don't know if they made a sequel and it was just another cop movie. I don't think I would be interested in seeing it.
Yeah, we're back to doing political assassinations. Yeah. We've learned nothing and gone nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. We're still government bad guys.
Yeah. So maybe if a sequel ever comes, which I don't think it will, maybe I'll revise my rating up. But as it stands right now, 3.5.
All right. Well, then I guess that is a wrap on Ghost in the Shell.
Welcome back, divers. We've got just one segment left for you, and that's where I ask Dave, what are you into right now?
Well, right now I'm really into a new vehicle release, and I'm a car guy. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because we have friends that are way more car guys than I am, but compared to your average person, I appreciate an automobile.
Yeah.
And so I am looking at the new Ford Bronco. Oh
yeah, the picture, that looks really cool.
Yeah, I was shopping for a Jeep Gladiator. And I kind of have motives here. Like, we tow a trailer with like a travel trailer, camper trailer with our Forester right now, and it does all right. It doesn't love hills, and it doesn't love windy roads. So I'm looking for something a little heavier duty, but still light duty towing. It's only like 2,500 pounds. So a Jeep Gladiator or even a Wrangler would do that, no problem. And while I was shopping for a Gladiator and looking at all the options and whatnot,
because I like those too.
Those are awesome. No hate for Jeep. I know there's a rivalry between like off-roader brand loyalists.
Sure.
I'm not in that.
Yeah. No Calvin peeing on your rival's sticker going on your vehicle.
No, if I see a sweet ass Jeep out on the trails when I'm in a Bronco, I will appreciate that Jeep.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, then the Bronco was announced by Ford, and they'd put out a couple concepts like over the last 6 years that were pretty cool, but none of them were actually as good as what got released. And that's rare. Concept vehicles are almost always cooler than production vehicles.
Yeah, totally.
And in this case, they actually flipped the script and they made a cooler production vehicle, and I love how they designed it. They actually took a Gen 1 Bronco, one of the Ford execs who owned it, a Resto Mod, really nice, straight-bodied one, and they digitally scanned it with lasers, and they brought it into their design software, and they used that as the basis. So every design modification, be it for modern legal and structural reasons or whatever, happened, but it was all based on the original Bronco. They didn't want those mid-era, those third gen or fourth gen Broncos. Yeah. They wanted that Gen 1 vibe.
And it has that. I think, does it actually, because the two-door especially looks like it could fit inside the footprint of the old school Broncos.
Yeah, it's a little bit longer and a little bit wider. Okay. Just like it's a little bit longer and a little bit wider than a Wrangler.
Gotcha.
But it's very similar, and I love it. I think it's awesome. So I put down my $100 for a pre-order.
Oh man, pulled the trigger.
It's fully refundable, so it's not really like I'm stuck in anything. But I've been in contact with my dealer representative, the person who is going to do it. And since it's a pre-order vehicle, it's not going to be one of those deals where you go to the lot and you get what they have, what packages. Oh, this one has these packages. This one has that.
It's so annoying.
Yeah, it sucks so bad. You're like, I didn't want that. I don't want to pay $1,200 for that. But anyway, so this one's going to have only what I want and exactly what I want in every little nuanced detail. And so that's going to be pretty cool. And it sucks that I have to wait until June of next year to get it, but that's okay because I like my current vehicles just fine.
Yeah. It's not like you're hitchhiking till then. You're doing okay.
Yeah, we're fine. So I'm loving on the new Ford Bronco, and I'm on the Bronco G6 forums, which is because it's 6th generation Bronco a lot. And so if you are also interested, definitely check out those forums.
That's awesome. I can't wait to like throw up some sand with that thing or
be cool.
Get it, just see how high we can get mud on the sides of it.
Well, I'm definitely getting the spray out interior with the marine vinyl seats and the drain plug floors.
Oh, that's a good choice. You go on the beach with your off-road vehicle and you never get rid of that sand. So just being able to hose the whole thing out is optimal.
Yeah, that was a mandatory feature for Carrie. She said carpet can't happen on an off-roader.
Totally.
All right, so that's what I've been spending my internet time with. What are you into right now?
What I'm into right now, or rather what I just finished, was the Sandman audiobook adaptation on Audible. Of course, Sandman is the seminal graphic novel series from Neil Gaiman. It was Vertigo Comics, imprint from DC. And they've just assembled this like absolutely stellar voice cast.
Oh, so it's not just a reading, it's actually like a performance?
Yeah, I'm not usually super into that, honestly. Like, I don't like the teledramas, but this one is so good. It's directed by Dirk Maggs, who he's a BBC audio director.
Does Neil do any of it?
Yeah, Neil does the narration, and you've got James McAvoy as Dream, and Kat Dennings as Death, and Taron Egerton as John Constantine, which that was a sort of a mind blow for me because I've always said Constantine. So it's like, okay, from Neil himself, it's Constantine.
Yeah, it's nice when you can get the author's opinion. Like, I know George Martin does a lot of those like interviews or whatever at panels, and when you hear him say the names properly, it's nice to know. That's
an interesting one too, because the audiobooks for the Ice and Fire pronunciations of the names is different than the HBO show on almost all of them.
Like, yeah, they say a lot of things like really weird.
Brienne and Brian, and there's a ton of.
I always liked Brian as a better pronunciation than Brienne in the show.
Yeah, but anyways, we're digressing. Let's stay on Sandman. I haven't read the Sandman graphic novels since not when they were new, but before they were old. Like back in the 90s. And this was like time traveling, listening to this audiobook. Like I was immediately like zapped back to my friend Megan, her teenage bedroom, reading those books from her collection. And I texted her, like, I was like, have you listened to this? She hadn't, but hopefully she will.
Oh, yeah, hopefully she will. Well, you know what's weird is I follow Neil on Twitter because I like Twitter. And
At Neil himself.
yeah. And he actually recently did a post, and he's really not like a self-promoter. He's not a salesman.
No.
But he did a post about a collection of all of the graphic novels being sold as one giant box set up for pre-order on Amazon. And he said, if you don't have a collection and you want one, this is probably the least expensive way to get all of it. It's $225. You get all of them.
Oh man.
I put it on my wish list. I hope I get it for Christmas.
I'm sure you will. That sounds very tempting. That'll look
good on that shelf.
I'd have to move my DC shelf to give it more space, because right now it's on the half DC, half Dark Horse shelf.
Oh man, no, you got to give it its own shelf.
Well, I don't have the Sandman box set to go up there.
I mean, because if you got the whole Sandman box set, you could then get like a cool Sandman bookend or something.
Oh, dude,
I'm all about accessories.
I already have too much junk on besides books on the bookshelf. But anyways, yeah, I love this thing so much, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And there is a Netflix adaptation of Sandman coming soon that's kind of in pre-production right now, and it's got me kind of my appetite re-whetted for Sandman stuff.
Man, I hope I get that box set before the.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're really laying it on thick for Santa here. So, anyways, I think that's it.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you the call to action. We're asking that you subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher and rate us generously. I think I've made that same mistake a couple of times.
Probably.
Specifically, let's give a hard push for Spotify, because we are on Spotify, but the majority of our listeners are from podcatchers. And that's cool, but I would definitely like to raise our profile in their algorithm so that we could get a little more of that organic spread. So hit us up on Spotify and help us out. Rate us generously. A 5-star review costs you nothing, but it means everything to us.
And you can find us across the metaverse on all social media platforms as Nick and Dave as Deep Dive the Meta. I messed up my own dialogue.
There we go.
Anyways, yeah.
I like Twitter. Nick likes Instagram, but we're also on Pinterest, which nobody likes. Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.